It is member-supported Hawaii Public Radio, all things considered. I'm Dave Lawrence. Today we're welcoming an artist playing the Blue Note. Tonight and tomorrow, 6:30 and 9 each night, it's Elvin Bishop with his Big Fun Trio. Something Smells Funky Round Here, their latest record. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame member, was an original member of the Paul Butterfield Blues Band, has performed with so many cats. We'd be doing the introduction forever if we ran through all of them, but hoping that he's going to tell us some of the great stories that he's got from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. He's a real survivor, has had a chart-topping solo hit like Fooled Around and Fell in Love, which you may know, and he can also lay claim to recording with some major foundation artists, not to mention jamming with some as well. Everybody from John Lee Hooker and Bo Diddley to working with the Grateful Dead and Allman Brothers with live jams, Jimi Hendrix, Clapton. Like I said, it's an incredible list, and it's an incredible thrill to welcome Elvin Bishop to the show. A big aloha and mahalo, Elvin.
Hey, glad to be here. How you doing?
I'm good, brother. Great to hear your voice. Great to have you with us. And you know what's neat about you, bro? You've had some long history in the islands, huh? Do you remember some of your earliest?
I remember playing Diamond Head Festival.
You remember that one, huh?
That had to be early 70s, I'd say.
Well, if you're up for it, we're blessed to have this listener, Steve, the mystery emailer. I don't know who he is, but whenever anybody comes for the last decade, he sends me all their history. So it's pretty remarkable. I don't know how he has these connects, but can I drop a couple dates on you? We'll see if you have any memories of these.
Sure.
In May of 1970, Santana does 2 sold-out shows at the Waikiki Shell, and the opening act was the Elvin Bishop Group. Don't know if it was your debut, but ticket prices were $5 and $3. And Steve writes that the Elvin Bishop Group stayed in Hawaii for a while and performed at a venue called the Pump House in Kailua.
I remember that.
You do? You do?
Yeah.
Okay.
That wasn't the first time we were there, though. It was a couple of years on from the first time.
Right. Yeah. And and to Steve's credit, he does not say that on there. That's just the first one that we've got. Another one is the next month you're back. Man, you came a lot back then. June 19th and 20th, you played in Hawaii at an event called the Great Hawaiian Blues Super Session at the Honolulu Civic Auditorium. Also on the bill, listen to this. Maybe you will remember playing with Boz Scaggs, Mike Bloomfield, and John Lee Hooker.
Wow. Now that one, some of these I have to take people's words for. That one slips between the cracks from my memory. I don't remember that, but it seems like I should.
Yeah, it says that you actually, later in the evening, Elvin actually sat in with John during his segment of the show.
Uh-huh.
So really remarkable. Another one, you came back in 73 with the Jay Giles Band, and you were at the arena. Ticket prices $6, $5, and $4. You love those things. It's funny, huh? How the ticket prices really have changed. But I guess everything costs a lot less. You came back in 74, and Cold Blood was on the bill with you guys.
That sounds right.
Another year later in 75, you come back with Mickey Thomas, new lead singer. And ticket prices went up slightly, $6.50, $5.50, and $4.50, I'm noticing.
Okay.
And then the one you remembered is the 2-day Summer Diamond Head Crater Festival, July 3rd and 4th, 77. Journey, Styx, Flash Cadillac, Continental Kids, and Detective. Also,
that was 77.
Yeah. You remember that now?
Yeah. The first time I remember being in Hawaii was there was some club run by a guy from Samoa. It was in like the marketplace in
Waikiki?
In Honolulu. Yeah.
International Marketplace.
Yes.
That's fascinating. That would have been your first, meaning in the 60s?
It must have been, yeah.
It's incredible. I mean, that's some real history. You go way, way, way back, and it's great to be able to connect those dots. And you're a kind of guy who bring us up to speed on what, as I was introducing you, it's neat because you're very, you're aggressively putting your music out there. You don't have one, you have 2 different and fun bands. You've got your Big Fun Trio and then your Elvin Bishop Band. Fill folks in on who's coming with you.
It's going to be the Big Fun Trio. A couple of just fantastic musicians that I play with. Willie Jordan and Bob Welsh are just, wow, they're powerful. You'll like it.
And that's not the Bob Welch from...
different guy.
Right, different, that's what I was going to say. And when you guys do this set, I was listening to a little bit of the music online at YouTube. I was kind of doing a little preview. Describe the show for folks, because it sounds like you have a lot of fun on stage, and you're both interpreting stuff, but bringing like a fresh spin to things.
Yeah, well, and we're there to show people a good time. That's the purpose of the whole thing. Anything else I want to do that it looks, I just kind of eyeball the crowd, and if it looks like there's certain things that they're not into, I can sit at home on the porch and play it. So it doesn't hurt my feelings. I want everybody to have a good time. We do enough of the old tunes to try and keep the people who've been with us for a while happy, and then always something new to keep the ball rolling, keep the musicians interested, keep the crowd on their toes. It's kind of a varied show, but it seems to work pretty good.
On that note of new music, give a plug for Something Smells Funky Round Here. That's still the latest record from the Big Fun Trio, correct?
Yep.
Give a little plug. Describe for folks what that is and what it means to you when you say keeping it fresh, keeping the musicians interested.
That particular tune, I'm not really that much of a political guy, but there's just one guy that I just really don't like. And I'll let you guess who it is. It's something smells funky around here. It's like the political situation.
I get you.
It starts off saying, I don't mean funky like a groove. I mean funky like PU. So that's the feel of that thing.
Right, I get you.
Some people like it, some people don't. But I grew up in Oklahoma, and I'm used to people disagreeing, and you really don't have to hate the people you disagree with. And I don't know if I hurt anybody's feelings. Can't be helped.
I think that's a great point you said. I mean, you said a lot of things there, because it's kind of like we've gotten a little extreme with our disagreements. We're kind of like disagreeing is just part of life, and being able to accept that you're not always going to get along with everybody's opinion. We did it for hundreds of years, and now it seems like it's impossible to kind of each have our own space. So you said a lot of
it's kind of a rough stage we're going through. I think things will snap back to a more balanced thing, once, give it a little time.
Let's hope. We can only hope, and I'm with you 100%. You mentioned Oklahoma, and I was always curious when I think about your evolution. You went to the University of Chicago as a National Merit Scholar, full scholarship to study physics.
Right.
But ahead of that, before you got there, and I understand you did that to be closer to the music that you had come to love, as a teenager growing up in Oklahoma, listening to late night radio.
Yeah, that's this was a long time ago in the 1950s. It was before civil rights, and Oklahoma was kind of sharply segregated, and it was not encouraged at all to hang out with people of other races. So, and the only way the white person was going to hear any blues was on the radio, and I did, and I fell in love with it. And I was lucky to get the scholarship, because that was my ticket to Chicago, where I knew blues was happening. My family didn't have any money. I come from a long line of farmers, basically, and no rich people, and nobody'd ever even been to college in my family, I don't think. But I got lucky and got that, and it was, you say I studied physics. I didn't so much study it. It's just they make you choose a major. You got to have a major. But I was studying blues, what I was studying.
Yeah, and that's what I read too. But what would have made you even, because it always seems so incongruous, physics? I mean, in what way did you put that down as a...
Well, I never was a good student, but I was a real good test taker. And fortunately, the University of Chicago was the type of place where you didn't have to go to classes as long as you could pass tests at the end of the semester. And I study real hard for a week or so before the test and do all right until I got to calculus. And that's something you got to really put yourself into. And that's where me and school parted ways right there.
Did you ever graduate?
No.
And is it because that's where you met Paul Butterfield and you just ended up with getting into the thing? Explain how it happened.
Butterfield, I met the first day I was in Chicago. It was just a guy sitting in front of an apartment building playing guitar and playing blues on the guitar and drinking a quart of beer. And I said, hey, this must be my type of guy right here. I better go, get to know him. And it just went on from there.
And how long after getting there, because I was looking at some of the, one of the great things, again, we're talking with Elvin Bishop, and he's tonight and tomorrow over at the Blue Note, and he's sharing stories with us. He's a very gentle, easygoing guy, and a lot of fun to talk to. Revealing is when I look at your bio, so many names crisscross, and we're talking about that era. You're just in Chicago, you've arrived there for school, you've met Paul. How long after that do you end up getting to jam with Buddy Guy and Otis Rush?
Maybe a year or two. It was within a week of getting to Chicago. I was, I'd made friends with some black guys that worked at the university, and they took me down to the ghetto, and I was checking out Muddy Waters Band and Junior Wells, and everybody was happening right then. Hound Dog Taylor, Howlin' Wolf, Otis Rush, Magic Sam, all in their prime. I was just the biggest stroke of luck that ever happened.
Explain the evolution to getting from watching it and having it have a huge impression on you, which can be just as powerful as playing it, but then you move on and you start actually getting on stage and playing.
Well, the blues guys were just way nicer to me than you would have expected. They would get me over their house and show me the ropes, and especially a guy named Little Smoky Smothers. I'd just go over and stay at his house for days on end, and he would school me and call in the neighbors. Once we had worked up a tune, he'd teach me the background. He'd play the lead, and that was great, and just bit by bit, and with, when you're young and on fire 24 hours a day working on it, it grows. It comes pretty quick.
Yeah. But how old were you, just to clarify? When did you first pick up the guitar, and give me the age range on that one?
Maybe 15.
Okay, so prior to coming there, you had a little bit of experience with it, and you brought one with you?
I knew a few chords, but I didn't know that much about blues. It's like Bob Seger said, working on mysteries without any clues, You hear the records. I got a hold of the records by then, but wow, how are those guys making those sounds, But it busted out big time when I was able to sit down with guys and see their hands on the guitar and say, oh, wow, this is what's happening, and find out what the words to the blues songs meant when I checked out the life that went with it,
Yeah, you're talking about that personal time in this cat's house and getting that kind of exposure. That's what you mean,
right? Exactly. Yeah.
No, that makes sense, and I get that. And from that, explain like the band. You think this is a band that when people look back at, groundbreaking East West, for example, plays a big role in shaping what would come to be the rest of your career. Played a big role for a lot of people you made happy at that time. What are highlights of that era of your life?
Well, we didn't really know we were doing anything that special. We were just trying to be like our heroes, and just being able to play the music and get paid for it. That was a big thing. It just really felt great. I don't know how many people have come up to me and said, "Man, you guys got me into the music." Musicians, and but we didn't know at that time. We were more musicians than sociologists. We're just going for the feeling,
And when you would play, like looking back at that song East West and that kind of like groundbreaking fusion-ish combination of flavors coming together, was at the time, can you remember any kind of feeling that you were onto something then, or how did something like that just emerge?
Well, we were into all kinds of stuff, both on stage and off. And they had a few things going then would kind of open up your mind to various things, you know. And we listened to everything from Coltrane to Ravi Shankar to, you know, the blues and R&B and everything, and Cannonball Adderley and all that. And we just started putting different things together. And East West was basically mostly Bloomfield's doing, you know. He was he'd been playing for a long time when I met him. He was way past where I was, and it was a good experience, good learning experience. Just playing with those guys. It was real good quality musicians.
I was going to say, that's a great insight into that. That says a lot about how that period maybe played a big role in the rest of your life, because you got to work with somebody who was so experienced and you could learn a lot of things from them. Plus, you were experimenting like that when, and you guys ever, I'm thinking of like weird bills that, not weird, let me say it a different way. I'm thinking of exciting and fun bills, concert bills that must have occurred at that time. Like when I hear that jam, I think, did you ever get to play on the same bill with Miles? And what comes to mind is like some interesting evenings that you say, wow, actually we did.
We played on bills with Rahsaan Roland Kirk and Charles Lloyd and people like that. I don't remember playing with Miles Davis, but the whole thing was there never were mixed bills like that before Bill Graham.
Right.
Bill Graham came, you know, and it was, you'd go see a rock show or you'd go see a blues show or you'd go see a jazz show, and then that's what it was. But I guess he looked out there and said, these hippies are all stoned on LSD. They'll take whatever I give them. I'm going to give them something good. I'm going to hip them to some stuff they don't know anything about. And he started putting together Albert King and Ravi Shankar and a jazz guy, you know, along with the Quicksilver Messenger Service or Big Brother or something like that, you know.
Yeah, it was very educational, is what you're pointing out. He and we've talked about him so much on the show with so many guys like you, and you're a great person to bear witness, actually, to provide testimony for not only what is a critical part of your life, of course, and hugely important stories within your own life, but then again, the larger music culture. And in introducing you, I mentioned some of these jams. You again, it's Elvin Bishop. He's tonight and tomorrow over at the Blue Note, making a remarkable, intimate pair of dates here in town. And Fillmore West jamming with the Grateful Dead, Fillmore East jamming with the Allman Brothers Band. Were those some of your first big jams there? Or when you think of that venue, as opposed to some radio guy asking you questions, what is your first memories that come to mind of that place?
Well, the 70s was more of a jamming time. Right now, everything, especially when guys get past a certain level of success, it's all pretty business-like, and it's all sort of cut and dried, and there's a formula way to do it, and there's not so much just guys showing up on a gig and jamming. It's like, I remember in New York playing not only at the Fillmore, but there were a variety of clubs where you'd go and we had jams with like Hendrix and B.B. King and Clapton and, oh man, just all kinds of stuff going on.
What's a Jimmy memory that comes to mind?
I remember he was a real sweet guy. He was real nice. And when it comes to jamming, you know, there's a lot of guys take it as their opportunity to show off and just really... they're kind of egotistical about the whole thing. Jimmy wasn't like that at all. He would, you know, he played nice. He would take turns, you know, and then when it was somebody else's time to solo, he would back him up. And then when it was his time, he'd step out and just tear up the world. So he was a cool guy. It's
nice how you talk about him, because it sounds like these are lessons you pick up yourself, because you see somebody else behaving diplomatically and like a gentleman, and you think, you know, that's the kind of way I want to be on stage. Is that accurate?
Yeah. I'm not sure it was that I thought that when I saw Jimi Hendrix, but yeah. I learned a lot from B.B. King, especially about that kind of thing. I always thought that if the Martians landed, we should send B.B. to talk to them, you know.
When did you first get to interact with him? He must have really moved you when you first met him, because he was also a formidable player that was influencing you.
Yeah, I'd been listening to his records forever, but I think I met him in maybe the late '60s. And the first thing he did, he invited me up to his hotel room in San Francisco, and here was this guy who was just generally acknowledged to be the number one guy in the blues world, which was the world to me, you know. And I went to his hotel room, and he's in his dressing gown, and he's got sheet music spread all over his bed, and he's just working like a dog on scales and practicing, you know. And I thought, wow, this guy is in the position he's in, and he's just in the habit of improving himself all the time. This is a real good lesson.
Wow, that's is that something that you would then go on to see yourself doing later, kind of being that devoted?
Pretty much. I've I don't know. I guess I'm lucky. I've continued to come up with ideas as the years roll by, which I'm 100 years old now, but I still get an occasional. I'm gifted with a tune or two, you know.
Well, that says a lot, though, when there he is, top of his game. He's hunkered down in the hotel room doing that. And that's the kind of privilege you've gotten throughout your life, I guess, is to find people in unusual situations. And sometimes getting back to those people that shaped you, you've gotten to work also and record with Bo Diddley. Was that something that meant a lot to you deeply and on a...
No, that was I like Bo Diddley. I didn't meet him till about 4 or 5 years after I did that, but I've been listening to him forever, and it was one of those deals put together by the business people. They sent me the tape, and I took it in the studio and overdubbed a part.
Wow.
I'd never met him at the time.
That's a great story. And then when you finally meet him, you're like, hey, we did a thing together. You may not remember because we weren't even in the same place.
I didn't even mention it because I knew he wouldn't remember. But he was a real cool guy, and we got along great.
Yeah, he had a great mouth on stage too, huh? You got to be careful you bringing your young children to a Bo Diddley show.
Yeah, he's a pretty gritty guy.
As opposed to you, because you're very careful and G-rated. I've noticed in talking to you, it's very impressive. It's like you're ready to do the library.
Well, hell, we're on the radio.
I know.
You got to watch it, you know.
You'd be surprised how some of the people talk on the radio, Elvin, and the amount of stuff I got to do to make it work for later. A guy that years and years and years ago, he came through the islands, and I guess he was doing the state fair. I forget what he did, but he came in and he was my guest in the studio. What a really sweet, wonderful, gentle dude. And in the course of him being on, obviously we had to talk about a huge song that he sang for you. How did you meet Mickey Thomas and explain Fooled Around and Fell in Love?
Mickey's a beautiful guy, and I'll tell you something. His voice is as good as ever now. Plus, he knows better what to do with it. I haven't seen him in a while, but every time I see him, we have a nice reunion. We've done some gigs. We did a couple of blues cruises together. But when I used to hang out with this guy named Gideon, who was a kind of a gospel. He had a gospel background, and he did rock. And he would go to the South and recruit different singers, you know, find really great singers, and he would put them together. He usually had 3 or 4 voices in his group, and it was a killer thing. But he found Mickey in Valdosta, Georgia, which is right next to Florida, you know. And he brought him back, and I saw him singing with Gideon. I said, wow, this guy's great. And we started jamming, and he ended up coming with my group.
How about that song? How did that come to be with a song that forever is, and that's, you know, sometimes about a career, you can have different levels of importance for different groups of people. And hardcore fans could care less about a song that's on the radio. And then for your income, for your children, for yourself, for so many other reasons, there's a whole nother group of people, and they're like, oh, that song.
Most people are, you know, music is a small part of their life, and all they know about it is what the media feeds them, what they're exposed to. And that's where a hit comes in. It makes no difference how many great blues songs I try to write, or these days, it's 99% of the people are going to think of Fooled Around and Fell in Love,
It's incredible how it works like that. Did you realize at the time, I mean, was there any knowledge?
No. That was one of those songs that was lucky. It just came to me, just snapped right in my mind. Some of them you got to work like a dog, and it takes a long time to get them together and a lot of work. But that one, I think I was floating around in a swimming pool, and it just came into my head, and I jumped out and grabbed the guitar, and there it was. And
you had the good smarts. You said to yourself, I'm not going to do the lead. I'll get my backup singer, Mickey, to do this. Well,
this was another accident that's happened to me, an example of how lucky I've been. We were doing an album, and this was during the Southern Rock scare, And it was, we'd done 2 or 3 albums, and they were mildly successful. And we were doing another one, and the producer said, well, we need one more piece of material. We don't have quite enough time. You got anything laying around? So I thought of this tune. I'd always liked it, but I couldn't get anybody to sing it for some reason. So we made a track of Fooled Around and Fell in Love, and so I jumped in. I didn't know what else to do. I sang the lead on it, but you're hearing my voice right now. It didn't butter the biscuit for that tune. So I said, Mickey, would you mind trying this? He went in there and killed it. There you go.
When you put it out there, you still didn't have an inkling that this is going to just fly up the charts, right? You're going to put it out there, and you just thought it might. You had no idea, correct?
Well, I'd been making records for about, 10 or 15 years by then, and I was kind of used to the idea that, you always have high hopes for your records, but after a while, you get a little more realistic. Say, well, the odds are not good. If I don't care how good a tune is of it becoming a hit. So I never thought about it till I started hearing it on the radio. I said, "Ooh, look out!"
That's what it must feel. That's a great brief description. So you're what, car, house, wherever, and all of a sudden on comes your work.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's got to feel cool. Well, and it's become a calling card all these years later, and like you said, I think it's one of those things. It serves its purpose, and is that the kind of thing, just for fans who are curious on the other side of it, as we were saying, all these years later, does something like that continue to earn revenue on its own as something that you look at as like, wow, I'm grateful for that aspect of what the song does for me?
It's better to have a hit than not to have one. I'll leave it like that.
Right on. That's a great way of looking at it. It is Elvin Bishop, who has been very, very generous, taking some time for us today, talking about his remarkable life and some of the really important cats that he's come across. And in the concerts that you're do here in Honolulu, do you do some storytelling as part of the show to share some of these experiences and lessons?
Not unless something happens that sets me off, or there's somebody that I don't know. It's what I say on the show is I never know what it's going to be.
It's better that way. It's nice that way. It's better to have it be spontaneous. Do you mix up your set list? How do you do the set?
Yeah, I just kind of see if I can figure out what kind of place it is, what kind of people are going to be there. And leave it a little bit open, we're kind of light on our feet, see what people seem to be enjoying, and we do a lot of the old tunes, and then, like Willie Jordan is a hell of a singer. He plays, it's kind of an interesting group. I've been told it's a fresh sound. He plays a cajon, which is like, do you know what that is?
Yes, I do. It's like a box you can sit on and has several different ways of making sounds.
Exactly. And so we don't have a bass player or a drummer, but we got guys that cover those bases. And Bob Wells is an amazingly versatile guy. He plays on the show regular guitar and bass and baritone guitar, piano, and Willie Jordan's a hell of a singer. He's got a lot of bases covered. He just fooled around and fell in love pretty damn good.
It's going to be exciting for folks because I'm sure there are a lot of memories that are going to be coming up. And then on the front end of this, like looking forward, what's going to be next? Do you have another one of these crazy cruises coming up, or what's your next plan after leaving Hawaii?
Yeah, we got a cruise coming, but maybe a couple next year, I think. I don't know. We're headed for the East Coast. We've already done New Orleans Jazz Fest and the Summer Fest in Milwaukee so far this summer. And just, I don't tour road dog it like I used to, 200 gigs a year or something, but basically fly out somewhere on the weekends and we get around pretty good.
Do you ever get to, because of the way these bills, you mentioned a couple actually, these packages where there's a lot of festival sort of dates where a lot of different bands are on the same bill. Do you ever get a chance to find yourself on stage jamming with some of the cats from, your yesteryear and you just think, oh my God, look at us, we're back together again?
Well, every once in a while, I'll not this time, but the time before we were at the Summer Fest, we got to jam with the Doobie Brothers. That was fun. And I think one of the guys lives on Maui.
Of course. Patrick Simmons lives on Maui. A couple of the guys, and Michael lives over there too. Michael McDonald.
I don't know him. I know Pat Simmons pretty well. I've been to his place.
Right, but you know who I'm talking about, Michael McDonald.
I do. Yeah, he's a great singer.
Yeah. He actually lives out here too. But yeah, Pat lives. You've been to his place on Maui?
Is that right?
No, I'm asking. Sorry, I said it Hawaii style. In Hawaii, we reversed the whole tense of the sentence. Forgive me. Have you have you been to his place on Maui?
Yeah.
Okay, so you have been there. Yeah, so and he's got.
Yeah, he's got a man. It's amazing. He's a heavy motorcycle dude.
Well, Doobie Brothers. Hello.
He's way into that stuff, yeah. I'll tell you something. You know Willie K, right?
Of course.
Yeah. When I met him, he must have weighed about 150 pounds.
Wow. And you're using that by comparison, I guess.
Huh?
And you're, without saying so much, you're saying, and that should show you how long you've known Willie, is what you're trying to say.
Yes, there you go. And I met him in the 70s. He's always had that great voice.
You have a real Hawaii connection. You didn't throw that thing out. So what other Hawaii connections are you holding back on me over there, Mr. Bishop, that we
George Kahamoku.
You know him too.
Yeah, he's a cool guy, yeah. I went to I've jammed with him a few times. I've gone to his gigs and stuff and gone to his hula. He was at some kind of hula school deal. And I went over, he's a professor. He teaches at the university in
Maui.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of the name of the town, Kaului. And I went over to his class. He wanted me to speak to his class. And this kid asked me, he said, well, what's the difference between rock and blues? And for some reason, I just kind of blurted it out. Well, rock is weed, blues is hash.
Oh, that's too funny. That's a good Hawaii kind of answer, huh?
It went over pretty good, I think.
You are too funny. Man, it's a shame we can't get you in the band to come in the studio because it sounds like you'd be a lot of fun to just kick back with.
That would be fun, yeah.
You feel like doing anything like that while you're in town, or you want to keep it easy?
Well, we can talk about it.
All right.
I don't know what kind of spare time we're going to have, What island are you on?
We're going to be the Honolulu date, so we're Friday and Saturday.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and I was just thinking it. I mean, I don't even know if our engineer is around or whatever, but it's just because you're just so easygoing. And I can imagine you'd be a fun storytelling cat to have in the studio. I guess. When do you get here? Do you know when you get to town?
I don't know exactly. I think maybe Thursday night.
Okay. Well, you look into your schedule. I'll reach out to the people who set the thing up.
Yeah, talk to Matt at Alligator. That's the way to do it.
Yeah, and we'll let them make a decision. But it's great talking to you. I hope you had fun today. I really enjoyed getting to talk with you, Elvin.
Back at you, man. Back at you. I appreciate it. Hey, everybody. It's Elvin Bishop. You may remember when I was a guest of Dave Lawrence here on Hawaii Public Radio, and now I am back helping them ask for a helping hand. Get that wallet out and make a contribution to your NPR radio station, Hawaii Public Radio.
Thank you, Brother Elvin. It's a great Elvin Bishop. He is tonight and tomorrow, 2 shows a night, 6:30 and 9. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame member, legendary cat, decent and kind, easygoing guy, too, that you can have a lot of fun talking to and just kick back with. I'll give you another hug and a high five. I really appreciate your time and all the great storytelling today, my brother.
Okay. It was fun.